Backpackers think they're on vacation, but soon find themselves trapped in a deadly game. Survival or torture? Which will they choose? Today I'll recap a 2005 horror suspense film, Hostel, so keep your eyes wide open and stay safe. The movie starts. In Amsterdam, 3 American backpackers, Paxton, Josh, and their friend Ollie from Iceland, meet a strange Russian man named Alexei. He tells them about a hostel in Slovakia, where American guys can meet local women who love Americans. The backpackers decide to board a train to Slovakia for their adventure. Once they arrive, they meet a Dutch businessman who acts very strangely, which makes the group feel uneasy. In the small village, they check into a local hostel and find their roommates to be 2 attractive women named Natalia and Svetlana. The women invite them to a spa, where they find the women waiting for them, naked in a sauna. The backpackers are both confused and intrigued by the invitation. Later that night, the group heads to a disco where they dance and drink with the 2 women. Josh, still upset from a bad breakup, isn't too sure about getting involved with either woman. He steps out of the club for a moment, but things take a strange turn when he is surrounded by a group of local kids demanding gum and candy. The Dutch businessman shows up again, pays off the kids, and tells them to leave. Josh is thankful and offers to buy him a drink in the club. Eventually, Natalia and Svetlana take Josh and Paxton back to their room, where the night turns more intense as they sleep with the men. The next morning, Ollie is missing, and his friends start to worry. A young Japanese backpacker named Kana also tells them that her friend Yuki has disappeared. To make things even stranger, Kana shows them an MMS photo sent from Yuki's phone. The picture shows Yuki and Ollie standing under a smokestack at an abandoned factory, with the word sayonara written underneath. But Josh and Paxton have no idea what has really happened to their friends. In reality, Ollie has been decapitated, and Yuki has been tortured, most likely killed. The photo was taken by a strange, hulking man who used Ollie's phone to send the message. Paxton and Josh, along with Kana, decide to leave Bratislava the next day. As they walk, they spot a man wearing Ollie's jacket, and they decide to follow him. This leads them to a museum filled with medieval torture relics. Paxton soon realizes that the MMS photo was faked. The smokestack, Yuki, and Ollie weren't really in that location. Later that night, while partying with Natalia and Svetlana, Paxton and Josh drink too much and feel the effects of alcohol. Josh stumbles back to the hostel, where the female concierge helps him to his bed. But after a few moments, someone enters his room. Who it is, no one knows. Meanwhile, Paxton, in a drunken stupor, passes out in the disco's storage room, mistaking it for the men's restroom. Something doesn't feel right, and it seems like they're all headed into even more danger. Hours later, Josh wakes up in a dark, scary room that looks like a dungeon. He's handcuffed to a chair, surrounded by power tools and weapons. The Dutch businessman walks in, wearing a leather apron and gloves, ready to hurt Josh. He starts by drilling into Josh's chest, just above his nipples, and in several spots on his thighs, even though Josh screams in pain and begs to be let go. After a while, the Dutch businessman stops. He sits down and talks to Josh, telling him about his failed dream of becoming a surgeon, explaining that his hands tremble too much. Josh begs to be set free, but instead, the businessman cuts Josh's Achilles tendon. Josh tries to stand and falls, unable to walk. The businessman lets him crawl toward the door, but then, he grabs him and drags him in front of a filthy mirror. With a scalpel, the businessman slashes Josh's throat, leaving him to bleed out. Across town, Paxton wakes up and heads back to the hostel, only to find that Josh and Kana are both missing. In his room, a new pair of beautiful women invites him to a spa, which feels strangely similar to the offer Natalia and Svetlana made earlier. When Paxton tries to ask the local police chief for help, the officer doesn't seem interested, making Paxton feel even more helpless. Determined to find his friends, Paxton tracks down Natalia and Svetlana at a hidden bar and demands they take him to an art show where he believes Josh and Kana are being held. The women agree and drive him to a factory on the outskirts of the town, but something is off. Natalia's attitude has changed. She's no longer friendly, but instead distant and mocking Paxton for being a naive American tourist. She leads him inside the factory, down a creepy hallway, and into a dirty, cell-like room where Paxton is horrified to see the Dutch businessman cutting up Josh's dead body. Shocked, Paxton yells at Natalia, but she just laughs and reveals that they pay her to lure tourists to the factory. Before Paxton can react, he's ambushed by thugs who drag him past cells filled with other backpackers who are being tortured by different clients. Paxton is now trapped in a nightmare that he can't escape. Paxton is dragged into a dark cell and handcuffed to a chair. Minutes later, a German client enters the room ready to hurt him. First, the man uses a gardening claw to torture Paxton, then points a gun at him to scare him even more. Paxton, trying to save himself, pleads for his life in German, which catches the client's attention. The client calls in one of the factory's huge guards to put a ball gag in Paxton's mouth to keep him quiet. But just as he's about to start using a chainsaw to kill Paxton, something strange happens. Paxton starts vomiting, either from fear or because the ball gag is choking him. As he chokes on his own vomit, the client quickly removes the ball gag, likely so Paxton doesn't die too soon. The client then moves closer with the chainsaw, but things go wrong. He accidentally saws off Paxton's ring and pinky finger and slips on the ball gag he had just thrown on the floor. The chainsaw then falls onto the client's own leg, and he ends up severing it instead. Paxton, still alive, is left in a dangerous and bloody situation. With his fingers severed, Paxton manages to slip his hand out of the cuff. He quickly grabs the client's pistol and shoots the man dead. When a guard comes in to check on the noise, Paxton pretends to be unconscious, sitting back in his original position. As the guard approaches, Paxton shoots and kills him too. Thinking fast, Paxton grabs his severed fingers, puts on a torturer's apron, and hides his face with a metal mask. He sneaks into the corridor, trying to avoid being caught. He hides in a nearby room and finds a bunch of other victims. To stay out of sight, Paxton hides under a pile of body parts on a cart. Soon, he's taken to another room where he sees a silent butcher chopping up dead bodies. To his horror, one of the corpses is Josh's. The butcher doesn't stop at just cutting up bodies. He's also looting the victims for their valuables and tossing the pieces into a large cremation oven. Paxton, seeing his chance, grabs a hammer and kills the butcher. He then manages to escape to the surface, but as he peers outside, he spots police officers secretly working with the factory men, meaning his nightmare isn't over yet. Paxton sneaks into a locker room, where he quickly dresses in the clothes of a client, carefully pulling a glove over his mutilated hand. While getting dressed, he finds a business card for Elite Hunting, a secret worldwide organization that offers murder for profit. The card reveals that they charge different rates depending on where the victim is from. Slovakians, Europeans, and especially Americans, who are charged $25,000 to be tortured. Just then, a somewhat crazed American businessman, played by Rick Hoffman, enters, thinking Paxton is another client. The businessman starts talking about his intended victim, and asks Paxton if he should kill her quickly or slowly. Paxton suggests a quick death, but the businessman disagrees, deciding instead to torture her. He leaves behind a firearm and exits. Paxton, seeing his chance, steals the pistol and escapes to the courtyard. But when he hears a woman scream, he can't just ignore it. Paxton runs back to the factory and finds the American businessman in the middle of torturing Kana, preparing to burn her with a blowtorch. Kana's right eye is hanging out, and Paxton, filled with rage, cuts it off to stop the suffering. They both escape and run outside, fighting for their lives. Paxton and Kana steal a car and speed toward the railway station. On their way, they spot Alexei, Natalia, and Svetlana, the same people from the original hostel. Paxton, filled with rage, runs them over with the car, killing Svetlana and Alexei. Natalia survives the initial crash, but she is hit again by the pursuers chasing Paxton and Kana. As they drive, Paxton notices a gang of kids and realizes that he's in the same car he was once driven in to the art show. Inside the car is a bag of candy, and the kids kill the people chasing Paxton after being bribed with the candy. At the railway station, Kana looks at her disfigured reflection, seeing the scarred face and the missing eye from the torture. Unable to handle the pain and horror of her appearance, Kana throws herself into the path of an oncoming train. This act distracts the guards, giving Paxton the chance to escape aboard another train, leaving behind the nightmare that almost cost him everything. Once aboard the train, Paxton hears the familiar voice of the Dutch businessman, the one who had tortured Josh. As the train stops in Vienna, Austria, Paxton sneaks off the train and follows the businessman to a public restroom. Paxton, being sneaky, throws the Elite Hunting card under the stall where the businessman is standing. When the businessman reaches down to pick it up, Paxton grabs his hand and, using a scalpel, cuts off the same fingers he had lost during his escape. Paxton then breaks into the stall and nearly drowns the businessman in the toilet, letting him realize who he is before slitting his throat and killing him. Afterward, Paxton quickly leaves the restroom and heads back to the train, ready to board and escape Austria, leaving his past behind him as he continues his journey. So, which awesome movies should we recap next? Drop your suggestions in the comments below and let's make it happen. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button so you never miss out on our movie recaps. We've got plenty more coming your way. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Produced by Warner Movie Recaps.